Tony.
Oh, you want me to move to the middle? Yeah, I'll do that. I was trying to stay out of the spotlight, center stage, if I may. Glass of water, I'll stay with you guys for a while here. Thank you.
Tony, Nick Hausman with Wrestling Inc.
Yeah, Nick, what's up, buddy?
I'll ask you what literally everybody wants me to ask you, which is, from your perspective, what happened with MJF this weekend?
I'm not going to comment on that, but I've got a lot of stuff on the pay-per-view I can comment on, but I'm not going to comment on that.
All right, well then I'll follow up with something maybe you will comment on, as Punk alluded to, sort of longer than average show. I had a lot of people hitting me up saying they felt fatigued, especially on the East Coast where the show ended after midnight. Is this the kind of length of show you're going to continue to put out?
I will follow the feedback of the fans. It was pretty similar. Revolution had great response, and commercially the show was very successful. Like I said before Chris came in, I was starting to say it was a little bit different, and I ended up adding a little bit to the length of the show to help the show commercially and help the show make money. And I think it made, if not a 7-figure difference, definitely a 6-figure difference in the bottom line of the show. And so it's a big consideration, certainly, and a major financial consideration when Game 7. Like I said, it was probably only a 28% chance of the Game 7. It was far more likely if I booked the show Saturday that there would have been a game, and it would have been the Warriors who were a big draw. And so the Game 7 only happens 28.1% of the time. 72% of the time, this would have been a pretty easy thing. And on the West Coast, I probably would have ended it around the time they always end. Every pay-per-view's ended between the same time until tonight. They've all ended. We've had a lot of the best pay-per-views anybody's done. They've all ended between 11:40 and 11:55-ish, between 11:40 and 11:56 on the East Coast, which is like 8:40 today. So this is about the same amount of wrestling bell to bell as the Revolution. The difference is, I was starting to say, Layla and Chris Statlander had a long, great match before Layla got hurt on the first match of the buy-in in Orlando, which was on the East Coast for the fans. And I thought the fans were far more, from that I learned probably better to put the stuff in the pay-per-view. I thought the crowd, this was the best. If people were fatigued at home, I'm sorry, because I never intended it to be that way, but it was the best the fans in the arena have ever reacted for the last 3 matches of any pay-per-view we've ever done, Nick. And I've done 13 of them now, and plus the original Fight for the Fallen Fighter Fest, which were free, but they were free domestically. I think they were still international pay-per-views, but I think our overall international gets a good deal on pay-per-view prices. So I think domestically, this was again the highest we've ever done for Double or Nothing. So as I saw it go, it was getting more and more likely that it was going to go 7 games, which again is very unlikely, less than 28.1% historically, exactly. And so as it was tied 2-2. I'm watching. Obviously, we did really well. If anybody followed the Wednesday ratings, I was really happy with the go-home show in terms of the quality of the wrestling. I thought the wrestling was excellent. I really loved the Samoa Joe versus Kyle O'Reilly main event, and the 3-way match with Swerve getting the win, probably his biggest win to date, and a big match on Dynamite with Jungle Boy and Ricky Starks. And I thought that it was very clear the basketball game with those guys had a big impact on the rating, because we were over 1 million for the first hour, P2, and about over 475 for the first hour. Then it was like, I don't know, 880 in the second hour. It was over 1 million in the first, so it was a huge drop, but because of the basketball. But still, overall, the show did a really good number. It was up week over week, and a .35 is a huge number to pull with what we were up against. We were a top 10 show on television right now, not cable, a top 10 show on all of television. Dynamite, with the competition it was up against, everyone was up against that competition, and it did really well for Warner Brothers Discovery, which had like 6 of the top 10 shows on Wednesday. And, I'm sorry, that's not true. ESPN had big coverage show. I think Warner Brothers Discovery had 4 of the top 10 shows. ESPN also did well. We beat every show on ABC, every show on Fox, every show on CBS except Survivor, and NBC has that power block with the Chicago shows, the Chicago Med and the Chicago PD and the Chicago Fire. Those did real well. We were top 10 on all of television, beating broadcast TV now. That's a huge deal for us. And that was against big sports competition. So there was clear, though, from seeing the way the first hour moved, that like it's going to swing our fans. I see evidence that we had, by putting the hot 3 matches on at the end, a lot of interest in the show, and it drove. Not only were they the hottest, like I said before, not to belabor it, the hottest the crowd's ever been for the last 3 matches of any pay-per-view we've ever done. So I felt really good about that. People at home, look, I've had dinner with Dana out here. I think I may have noted to people while I was out here, and with my dad, and we were talking about it. It's a great business strategy for them too. Punk and Hangman went to the ring before any UFC main event you'll ever see, and they do pretty well. They do great numbers. They're the biggest pay-per-view company in the world, and they do a great job. They've had they have similar number of fights as we did matches, actually more. You'll see like 50 prelims, like 15 matches on a UFC card. Why? For a lot of reasons. They have a lot of fighters that people are interested in. It drives engagement. It drives betting. It gives people more time to buy the show, build more word of mouth for a main event. And hey, on a Saturday, guess what? Like, it's no secret I'm in the football business. I, for my career, have to watch football on Saturdays.
So were you trying to move in kind of a UFC style direction? Are you trying to kind of...
No, like I said, I'll see what the feedback is.
Okay.
This was a unique circumstance. I was flexible with a window. It's a good chance that we would have ended it at the same time we always do. If I hadn't had to add to the card to make sure there was a whole, almost like, look, the whole pay-per-view was great. But it was one more match than Revolution, bell to start to finish if you had to buy in. There were 12 matches on the Revolution. There were 13 matches tonight, including the buy-in. There were 12, it was 9 plus 3 on Revolution. It was 12 plus 1 tonight, so it was one more. Bell to bell, it might have been, I think it was very similar start to finish in terms of the action. And it was on the West Coast, which I think makes it make more sense. So like I said, for these people in Vegas who come to the fights, and also people from all over the world, but in Vegas, in this building, they never see a world title fight before we got to the match. And they start earlier with more fights. I think, I'm not saying look, a UFC model is a very successful model. We're obviously totally different sports.
I was going to say, yeah.
But I have a ton of respect for what they do on pay-per-view, and that's why one of the reasons why I've loved is not, they're the 800-pound gorilla of this business, and I stay out of the way, and also Dana's my friend, and he's been so cool to me. So like, I take great pride in their success, and also like being here in their home building, in their hometown, and like, this is his territory, so I wanted to see him with my dad and hang out with him while I was here. But like, he was telling me, it was worked great for their business too. I was telling him, I bet now, because Game 7 was looking it was Thursday night we had dinner, so I didn't know there was Game 6 hadn't been played yet. But I was telling him, I was like, and they have these things all the time. They have big sporting events on Saturday nights. College football's huge, and same as me, they're rooting against the game going to overtime. And tonight, I think it was a 4-point game. So we had, Shivani push when the game ended, not saying about the basketball exactly, but saying like, hey, there's people at home, if you haven't been watching, this has been a great pay-per-view, which has been a lot of great stuff already, and there's so much left to go. And when Anarchy in the Arena was going off and the crowd was the hottest they had been at the entire point in the night, and the basketball game's over, that's a good ad for people to like, hey, you might want to like flip this on. There's a lot of people watching with their families or with their friends. Gatherings now are back. People are hanging out in their homes more, so it's a great reason, hey, the game's over. If you get one wrestling, I've been that wrestling fan, right? I've been that fan at like watching, hey, was the Royal Rumble 2003 on during the football championship games? It was, right? Anybody?
NFC and AFC championship games?
I'm pretty sure it was. I remember watching the matches, like the Kurt Angle match, and I'm pretty sure the football games were on that night. And that's like literally the second and third highest watched TV shows of the entire year after the Super Bowl. So I was in that game. We were in the Jaguars were actually the number 2 show of the year in that year, second most watched show of the year. So like, look, like I thought it came out incredibly well. I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but it was a crazy week for many reasons and for the length of the show. It was shorter than WrestleMania 31, I believe, which is a great show other than the Sting stuff, I think, is one of the best shows. And so besides that part, is a great show, and it was significantly longer than what we did tonight, especially with the stuff at the beginning.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's the same day. January 19th.
It was?
Yep, January 19th.
January 9th, it was the same day. Yeah, they were up again. So I remember watching the champion, which is obviously a big part of my life now, 2003 Royal Rumble. So like a lot of big events that happens, but we actually fought through. This is a big win. We did our record gate. We did the record for Double or Nothing again, every time, and it was a big success for the crowd. That's why I put those 3 matches at the end, knowing that the crowd would be the hottest they've been, and we got the hottest crowd. I think for people at home, look, like that was one of the things Dana said that really got through to me. It's like if what you're doing is working, keep doing it, and like ignore like some of the noise if it's working, because like you're gonna get people that don't like what you're doing no matter how well it's doing. And I think, look, that being said, I don't plan to always go this late. I think it was a unique circumstance, but I left us the flexibility. We could have ended like we have every other time, by 11:40 to 11:58 on the West Coast, which would have been 8:40, and it would have been about 40 minutes earlier than we actually did end. But I added about 40 minutes into the show, and like I said, I think it paid off at a tune of 6 to 7 figures.
Okay.
Thanks.
Will Washington.
Hey, Will.
By Grapsity. How you doing, Tony?
Great, Will. Thanks. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Great.
Actually. Don't really have much of a voice. I've been doing a lot of screaming. So.
You've had a big week.
Yeah. Really good.
Well, you've been traveling.
I know. I have been back and forth.
You went back and forth?
I've been back and forth.
You got to see your cousin win a high-profile match on television?
Yes, that was great. That was the whole reason I came. So, speaking of which, I have been to a lot of AEW shows. I'm pretty sure this is like my 13th. And one of the things I have noticed is I pay attention to the crowds. And this crowd in particular, for all the pay-per-views I've been at, was the hottest I had ever seen it in the final stretch. Especially once the
Arena. I warned the guys. That was the one thing I said might happen is somebody would do what you just did. But Anarchy in the Arena.
Anarchy in the Arena, right? We've used Anarchy twice. Okay.
Yep.
So with that said, this was only the second pay-per-view that AEW's ever had in the Pacific time zone. So knowing that going forward, do you see, or is this a better question for Raphael?
Well, no, Raphael and I literally talk every day about the booking. So it's a question for the two of us. We're the ones that do it.
So do you foresee, especially with talking about the length of these pay-per-views and how, that you were talking about, you were comfortable going along with this one, do you foresee doing more shows, specifically pay-per-views, out closer to the West?
I do think if the competition was right, I would maybe have had, the buy-in, maybe the length, one match less on the night, maybe one more on the buy-in, maybe two less on the pay-per-view, change things. I could have moved things around had, things not gone this way with the timing. But it is nice to have the flexibility. Also, we just want to service the fans all across the country. I think we've been all over and done pay-per-views all over the country. I think there's a lot of great places to do pay-per-views on the West Coast. We're just now bringing the TV to LA this week, which is obviously a good thing for me to plug and talk about now with Dynamite for the first time and Rampage coming to California. And I think now that we're finally doing Dynamite and Rampage out on the West Coast also, and of course Double or Nothing, bringing it back here, which I think now, like I said on Wednesday and Friday, I didn't spend any time with Lyle. I wasn't planning to go out at all. Martha asked me to go out with her, Dr. Martha Hart. I was not planning to go out. She asked me. I wouldn't have taken up. I told her it's her moment, and that's why I got the heck out of there after I did walk her out as she asked, and then I thought she was doing great. She was out there with two great ones, and but I wasn't expecting to go out at all. But I had said on Wednesday and Friday, Double or Nothing staying in Vegas forever, and I think they showed why. It's great to be back, and there's great markets on the West Coast and the Mountain Time Zone too. As you know, as a Mountain Time Zone guy from Denver. So there's and that was one of the last Dynamites before the pandemic shutdown. It was the second to last show. It was actually the show after our best pay-per-view at that point, probably to date, was Revolution 2020. And tonight was the same kind of hot crowd, hot environment. I was really proud of it. So it was a longer show, but again, it was shorter than a lot of WrestleManias and Wrestle Kingdoms. So I do think like we get held to a very high standard, which is overall a good thing in sports, as I've seen. Better than not being held to a high standard, as I know from some experience in football in America and at times in Europe. But right now, things have probably never been in a better position to fall than we are right now.
Dave? And I know this is something you probably think about all the time, and it's related to the crowd, which was great. But in WWE, there's a sheet that says baby faces, heels, and if you say, "I want two heels to wrestle each other on Raw," you're gonna say no.
How do you know that, Dave? Tell everyone.
I'm not, because I worked there. God, this is weird.
What did you do there?
I was a writer.
Oh, okay.
It was embarrassing. Anyway.
Oh, wow, jeez, why is that embarrassing? Hey man, I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying to be a dick. Working in wrestling is a great thing, and that's a great place to work in wrestling.
Sure, yes, it's great. But the question is, Tony, you do this a lot, and this main event was two baby faces, two of the most popular wrestlers. And were you ever worried that when they went out there would be maybe not good tension, but like negative, like weird, like, oh, this person, maybe this is not good for them and their character going forward? You ever feel like that conflict, that special tension that you need in a wrestling match isn't there if you have two people that are kind of the same alignment?
They're very different wrestlers,
right?
And they have very different backgrounds, and they've had very different paths to get here. So I thought that even though neither one of them is like a traditional rule-breaking wrestler, a lot of times they say styles make fights. I thought they'd have a great match, and I also thought, look, the sanctity of the championship is very important. Like, we've had 4 champions until tonight. Now we have our 5th champion, and every one of them is somebody the company can hang their hat on as a face of the company, and that includes Hangman, who was excellent. And look at all the great matches. And I know I said this to a bunch of you in the build-up too, and in interviews, but what a great champion Hangman has been for the company. And it was something I felt really strongly about, and it's something I believe in. And look, I'll tell you the truth. When he took some time away from the company a year ago, I don't think a lot of people in my position would have held things for him the way I did, and made sure that he still got a world title shot when he got back, and put him in a position where he go in the casino ladder match, give him the opportunity as a joker to go in and then earn a world title shot after he had not been around, and could have gone with people that were more experienced, but I believed in him, and Hangman is a guy we've been lined up in from the beginning, and I'm a loyal person, and he's a loyal person, and he's a great wrestler, and from the very beginning of the company, the story when we were out here was Hangman, and then it was Jericho, and then of course Mox and Kenny at the end, and we're the first 4 world champions. Well, we set up for Jericho, Mox took the title from him, and Kenny, which was the end of the show, and the beginning of the show, as we set up going into it, was we knew coming into the show, it was Hangman was going to wrestle whoever wins the main event. It's either going to be his kind of, they weren't partners yet, but his stablemate, Kenny, which would set up more later. But so the 4, we really believe in these 4 wrestlers. And I thought that this was the perfect main event for the fans, a match that was a must-see. It was like Punk said when he was sitting in this chair before they asked me to move over, which I was going to leave the aura of this chair that CM Punk and Jade and Chris had sat in. So, yeah.
I think you were proven right about the match.
I agree.
The
thank
crowd
you.
certainly said.
There were people that didn't. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because there were people that thought that it might not make as much. And I was said from the beginning it would, and that for the prestige of the title, it was actually very important. And I guess now is as good a time as any to point out that I didn't. And I talk about Hangman, and this comes full circle. Around the time he left was around the time Punk came in, and a bunch of people said you should put the belt on Punk as soon as he gets in, especially when Hangman wasn't there to wrestle Kenny at All Out. And the reason he was not there is a very legitimate reason. It was a great reason. I'm very happy for Hangman and his family. And at the time, that was his private matter, and I think it was great that what they've done and had a family. And then he came back and beat Kenny in the payoff of what's the oldest, longest standing story in this company still. And they have had one of the best matches, if not the single best match in the history of the company, with Hangman and Kenny and the Young Bucks. And at Revolution 2020 again, I always go back to it because it was a special night. And I think, Dave, it was the right match, and I appreciate you saying that, because I do feel like it was proven right. As I was pointing to somebody in the back, because I smiled to him, because I told him that the crowd was gonna, and a bunch of people worried about the length of the show, and I told him commercially this is something that is going to be very good for the bottom line of the company, and I promised that the crowd will be hotter than ever, and with what we have at the end, it's going to be great. And I thought, between the Anarchy in the Arena and the World Title match, the World Tag Title match was a great, perfect match to go in between. And Hangman, whether it was a Kenny winning the title from Kenny, the first 60-minute draw on live television, my lifetime, I don't know of one. I think Bachling Hennig was taped, Dave, right?
Bachling and Hennig did a tape match, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no live 60 minutes in the modern. Kerry Von Erich and Ric Flair on the Financial News Network was taped in Hawaii.
Oh, that was taped weeks before it ever aired, yeah.
So there's no live 60-minute Broadways?
I mean, there was
Iron Man matches,
the Iron Man matches.
but no, not Iron Man matches. Like actual,
Closest
like
was,
one
Shawn
fall.
and
One,
John
have there been a
Cena.
one fall 60-minute time
Shawn
limit drawn
and,
left? I don't think
John
so.
Cena.
Shawn and John Cena did 55.
But that wasn't a 1 hour.
Yeah, it was an hour.
Okay, it was close. They did. Hey, that was a great match. That was a
And
great match. But
Flair-
was that taped to lit? Wasn't it?
That was taped to lit.
That was also taped.
Okay,
to
and Flair and Steamboat did 55 live.
Yes, and that was two out of 3 falls.
It was 2
So
out of 3
one
falls.
fall, 60-minute Broadway. It's the only live television in the modern. We've
In the United
gone
States.
through a lot, and we
Because
went through a
they've done
lot
it
of
in
stuff
Japan.
just now.
In Japan it's happened.
What's up, Dave? What was the last thing you said?
Oh, in Japan it's happened though.
Oh, but yeah, I'm sorry. In America, yes, domestically.
Yeah.
Domestically, the first. So Hangman and Danielson, and then the match they had to kick off the TBS era. Like Hangman was the champion that brought us into TBS, which is like really meaningful and important, and that'll never be forgotten. The Hangman Danielson match on January 4th was a huge success for us. It was January 4th or 5th? 5th. Thank you. I was thinking January 4th in the brain. Thanks, Raph. Good job. January 5th. I knew I caught myself there. Yeah, on January 5th when we started the TBS era, that Hangman Danielson will always be a huge part of it. And then the matches with Adam Cole, who again, what a way. Adam Cole, what a great moment with Adam Cole and Britt and Martha Hart, I thought. And Adam Cole, great matches with Hangman. The Texas Death Match was very special, and of course Revolution. A lot of people, again, didn't think that at the end they would get the reaction and stuff. And Hangman and Cole got the crowd was as into it as anything. I think up to for at least for a while there. And it was just an awesome match. And Hangman's been tremendous. Takeshita Great match with Takeshita. I think that was unanimous. So styles make fights, and we talked about the run Hangman's had, and we, you know, when Punk was in here, we talked about the run he's had, and it just felt like the right match. So thank you for let me give you a long answer to your point, but just felt right. And as far as how they come together, I think there's, you know, I hate to borrow a phrase from your former employer, shades of gray, right? And that's UFC, that's Pro Wrestling, that's AEW. Hey, Steph. Great.
So with owning Ring of Honor for the past couple of months, how have you found juggling that with AEW as far as time management, everything else you do, even sorting like the rosters of all the wrestlers you have, and then with it being now a pay-per-view month, plus you've got Forbidden Door coming up, what has that been like?
It's been the greatest run we've had. I think it was a crazy time. I've never been busier than I was through April and May, and now it's starting to actually like open up and light at the end of the tunnel in a really positive way. But I'm also excited what's coming in the fall and winter. So I'll come full circle back to AEW if I may. So and Ring of Honor, both. First of all, before I go full circle, I'll start. Ring of Honor technically hasn't been a few months I've been the owner actually. It just closed pretty recently. It was kind of a gutsy thing I did on working off the interim agreement, but I was actually the interim booker for a while there because I hadn't actually, Sinclair was still owning the company, but I'd taken over financially, and it was agreed that like everything was, it was really cool. They were really good to work with, and I think I was like, they wanted the Supercard of Honor to happen. I think it made sense if I was going to purchase the company that the Supercard of Honor would happen with me booking the show and running the show and taking since it's after the agreement, you know. But they were great. Sinclair was awesome with it. So I actually just closed pretty recently because they were awesome to work with. But it's a complicated asset transfer. I think sometimes like, you know, that's stuff the outside of the business. Sometimes people that aren't in the business communication with all the assets that were being transferred, and there's a lot to document, that we had made a deal. And it's a pretty famous story because I was not sure that it was actually going to close in time for the announcement in March in Daly's place when we did the announcement of Ring of Honor. So we worked off an interim agreement. So now we come back to that. As we close that, it was a really exciting time for AEW. The Supercard, going back to that, and how busy I was around that time. We're getting ready for the NFL draft at the start of April. Fulham is in a really exciting position at that time. It was looking increasingly likely that we would get the automatic promotion, but also we really wanted to win the Football League Championship, which we did. And so going through April, it's always a crazy time for me with the NFL draft, especially I still do the same things I've been doing for many years, where I like focus on the players that don't get drafted and try and use statistics to find some good undrafted players. And so that was a really busy time, and we were coming back. I literally flew in from TV in Philadelphia. I came from Philadelphia, where Doug Peterson was the head coach, the Jags head coach, and then I came back for the draft. I'd been in Pittsburgh, and then came back, and I went to Philly, and then came back right from Philly, and I literally got in the morning of the first round, and I'd been doing everything on the phone and Zoom, and at the same time, Fulham was cruising. The Ring of Honor, we had just done the pay-per-view, and I was really proud of the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And talk about pay-per-view length, you know, that was under 3 hours. It was like kept it to 3 hours. It's different. If that's really what people want from AEW, I'm open to it, okay? If people want less for their $50, I'm open to doing it if that's really what people want. But I do think, look, a lot of commercially successful things, the Batman, I see people saying to Matt Reeves, like, you made a long Batman, but it's also the most commercially successful thing that Batman's done in a long time. So it's worked very well for us because we did record numbers and the crowd was hotter than they've been. So, you know, you do hear, but again, you see that's the one thing people say about the Batman, right? 3 hours. But
You're talking to me right now, but when you started...
Well, you're the one who asked.
I know, but when you started AEW, you said you didn't want to do these length of shows. You said you didn't want these WrestleMania-length shows. That's what I'm wondering, is if your strategy has just changed in the 3 years.
Well, I've seen some, again, I've learned a lot, and pay-per-view numbers have grown, and again, that's part of, like, on pay-per-view, I think we've grown as a pay-per-view. Every milestone we could hit, we've hit. Every pay-per-view year over year has gone up, and we did it again tonight. And it was against probably the toughest competition for any Double or Nothing yet, but I don't think we've had to face a Game 7 playoff with two big teams. 10 years later, literally 10 years after the Heat and the Celtics won 7 games, I was here when Manny Pacquiao left the crowd sitting. I sat for an hour waiting for something. And this crowd didn't sit waiting for shit. They had the hottest 2 lead-up matches to a main event they ever had, and then they had the hottest main event. It was the hottest go-home stretch of shows we've ever done. Again, I like giving people a lot for their $50. The Ring of Honor pay-per-views are less money, so I do them a little. It's not to value the fan every bit as much, but we do a little bit. We charge a little bit less, and we do a little bit less. I've only done one, but it was one of my favorite shows I've ever done. I'm really proud of it. And so going back to that, I love doing that, and then since then. There's been the merge. What, are you okay? Are you mad?
Yeah, we were
Andy's shaking his
I'm
head.
gonna give Nick the mic next time.
Sorry. Yeah.
No. You're okay. Is everyone
Yeah,
okay?
it's okay.
I'm fine. I was just going back to your question.
Fine, I wanted to address you too.
Oh, okay, I saw Mandy shaking. Oh, you're great. You did great. Good. So, Steph. So going back to this, because I really want to. It's a long question. There's a lot. So if you want to know everything, I'll give you a long answer. So then going through this merger and now the new company we've come out of with Warner Brothers Discovery. That is a really exciting time for us too. It's a really exciting thing. And then even this week, like I did press and I was on Zoom with the manager and the CEO of Fulham and with Marco talking players all the days. Get up early for that, and then Jags were in camp. That's an exciting time. The coaches are starting to evaluate players coming in. It's kind of a quiet time for me in football. I was just at the NFL owners meeting. So I was at the NFL owners meeting in Atlanta talking about media rights and exciting things. I flew out here and for TV. So I was at the NFL owners meeting Tuesday, came out here Tuesday night. We did TV Wednesday. Thursday morning I was up at 5 a.m. and started doing radio on the East Coast at 5:55, and then I did it till noon. Then I took a shower quickly. No, wait, no, that's not true. I did the all media call. I took a shower. I talked to a bunch of you on the all media call, and then I went to LA and I met with the new management of the company, and then headed out there. And it was the most exciting, exhilarating meeting I've ever had in my life, and I've never felt better about the future of the company and more safe about what's happening here. And I feel really good about the new Warner Brothers Discovery to have such a strong management. Nancy Daniels is such a strong leader, and she was really cool. And so I flew out to LA and back to meet Nancy Daniels along with her team, and it was some familiar faces and also new faces, and it's really exciting. It was my first time at Discovery, and what a great thing we have. This is the future of everyone who works here and the fans, who it's really important, because now I feel like there's a real Discovery sees too how important it is to the wrestling fans to have wrestling on TBS and TNT, because it was gone for too long, and it's really cool that it's back. I think it means a lot to a lot of people. I know it does. And so we have such great management there, and they asked such great questions, and it was really encouraging. And I know there's so many things we can partner on, and I'm really grateful for that. So that was probably one of the most important things going on. So it's a ton of stuff, and now the Ring of Honor is closed, and I'm still. I think there can be a future there, hopefully with a weekly Ring of Honor and also big events. Supercard was a huge success. It was many times over recent Ring of Honor pay-per-views, one of the biggest Ring of Honor pay-per-views ever, and. Yeah, so it's all really exciting stuff, and then football season's going to start. Fulham's back in the Premier League. The Jags have a new head coach who's awesome, and I really love Doug, and he's brought so much experience. He won the Super Bowl. I don't know if you're familiar with. We come to England a lot every year, the Jaguars, and Doug. We actually played Doug, the Eagles, in the year after they won the Super Bowl, and the year after we lost an AFC Championship game, they beat us. And Doug, he's played in the NFL, and he played in the Super. He's been on the roster of a team that played in the Super Bowl, and Doug's played in big games, and he's a great coach. So working with him's awesome. So I'm really excited for football season, both in the Premier League and in the NFL, and really excited for the summer to come in wrestling. I mean, to go to the Forum is a big deal for me. I claim a lot of places as homes, like Ted DiBiase when I was a kid. He changed his residence every quarter, but I do. I live in. A lot of the year in Jacksonville more, and I base out of there, but I travel 52 weeks a year every week for Dynamite. So I do, 175, 200 flights a year when you include football for both continents. And it's just 104 alone for Dynamites. And if I'm in Jacksonville, maybe twice a year, call it 100 just on Dynamites. When you add in live rampages, pay-per-view specials, football, it's a lot. So a lot goes into it, but I try to manage the time and remember that I'm responsible for a lot of people, and I love every minute. I'm doing whatever I'm doing, I love it, because to work in those businesses, it means a lot. So LA is one of, along with Jacksonville, Champaign, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, and London. I consider LA one of my big 5 homes, and I've never gotten to work with AEW doing a show out there before, but it's where AEW was actually formed. And I was just telling the new management this story because it was actually out there where I first had the conversation. It was in April 6th of 2018, where I had a conversation out there that led basically the launch of AEW, and it was with my partner and activist artist management, Bernie Cahill. He dragged me out on a Friday night, and there's a good chance we wouldn't be here if he hadn't. And I saw the president of TNT and TBS at the time, and he took a chance on us that I'll never forget, and then after the ratings were good initially, he took an even bigger chance on us and gave us the extension, because the first deal didn't pay that great, but it was still an opportunity to go on TNT and TBS, and it did pay something. And now it pays fairly, I think, and they've done very right by us, and now we have a whole new management team that can get behind us in new, exciting ways with AEW. So that's a lot of stuff. I also have, there's a bunch of other companies I'm on the board of our own that I'm not talking about here, True Media, Sports Analytics, but the management team there does a great job running the day-to-day, and other business ventures. I'm on committees in the NFL. I'm in the fan engagement and major events committee of the NFL. In March, I flew out for TV ahead of the Fort Myers TV. I had a committee meeting in Palm Beach. I don't get much time to myself, so I was talking about Batman and Nick and how long Batman was. I landed in Monday night for a committee meeting in Palm Beach. Jonathan Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, is actually a big AEW fan, so he runs the fan engagement and major events committee, and he was nice enough to put me on it, because I think we've shown that we do a good job engaging with the fans here, and can add to the big events in the NFL, which are the biggest events in the world, and the engagement with the fans, which I think we do a good job with. And Jonathan's one of the world's leading experts on that and data. And he's a big wrestling fan. When we did Mox versus Nagata in the summer of 21, I knew Jonathan Kraft was a big wrestling fan when he said to me, like, "You got them coming on your territory," and I was like, "Oh my God, you get Mox versus Nagata, the business of it." It's like, and at the time it was a business coup unto itself. What was happening in the world of wrestling, I got to lay the hammer down in a major goddamn way. So so it's a lot, but I'm just, yeah, it's awesome. And does that begin to answer it for you with the juggle? It's like juggling. Great. No, it's a great question. I hope it was a good answer, and hopefully it's a start.
Guys, just a few more questions, okay? Denise?
Great. I can take a few more, and I want to make sure anybody who came and stayed all this time gets to ask me whatever they want. Hey, Denise. Speaking of the Ring of Honor Supercard pay-per-view, what a great host you were.
Thank you so much for saying that. I'm very happy to hear that. So my question for you is, given the fact that we had our first Double or Nothing year in 2019, I was here for the show, and so much has happened since then. So today, knowing everything that you guys have accomplished, all of the records and the people and the over $1 million and all of that.
Over 1.1.
1.1.
It's a big lot. It's 100,000.
It is. It's a big difference. Yes. So with all of that being said, if you can go back and tell your 2019 Double or Nothing Tony Khan self, what advice would you tell yourself, or what would you go back and tell yourself during that time period?
Trust your instincts going into the pandemic, because what you're doing is safe. You're not going to let anybody get hurt. It's voluntary. Everybody wants to come. It's voluntary. The first week, March 18th, was like really hard, and a bunch of people, like, I walked out of my office, and like every big star in all my office were in there, and they were all pulling in different directions. And I was like, look, if you don't want to be here, it's 6 o'clock. The show goes live in 2 hours. You were in there. And I said, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. But the show goes live in 2 hours. And the show I formatted, like, if anybody doesn't want to come, I'll change it, because I got time. But and it ended up being a huge success. I think like 950 ballpark watched it, and the P2, and it did a huge number in the demo. One of the biggest we saw, and it was actually significantly up, and it did a huge number for the debut of the late great Mr. Brody Lee and Matt Hardy. And it was supposed to be in Rochester and Brody's hometown, but we put together the best show we could and pushed forward. And now it's a historically important show in the history, and it started the pandemic and put the wrestlers around ringside. And it was a weird week for me, trying to figure out what to do in the pandemic. And I watched wrestling on Monday, and when I didn't see the fans, the wrestlers as fans, and when I didn't see the camera, the hard cam on the screen, I thought, okay, we got something here, because I figured then between then and Wednesday, it wasn't going to change either. Back when we had competition on Wednesdays, and I can tell you, I've never watched the competition. We've done 100 shows head to head with other wrestling competition. I've never watched one before, but I did have basketball on the side today. So it's a good question. A lot changed, but I would say the pandemic was the most important thing we did, because we were on fire going into the pandemic, and I think like I kind of around Christmas that year, that was the last time we had a week off. The last time was Christmas 2019. Which was, I think really said something to our new bosses, that we were like, we'll work hard and commit. And I never, safety-wise, we had no issues. We had fans. When we brought fans back, AEW was the first to bring fans back, actually even ahead of the Jaguars. And the Jaguars ended up using our seat configuration, which then a lot of teams use, the 25% configuration we brought back. And there's different ways to do it. And I'm not saying that I get anytime I say something, I kind of can't live without. There's different opinions about the Thunderdome, but I thought there were things about it like that's a way to go. That's a way to go. But if outdoors for us, we were outdoors, not indoors. So outdoors, I equated it, and a bunch of you heard me say this 100 times, but I'll say it again. The drive-in movie. The drive-in movie experience. It was like, we're going to create it and we'll bring the fans back. We're outdoors. This is safe. They've said it's 99-point-something% safer than being inside. 99%. And that if we put people out there, as we did, even with masks outside, socially distanced from everyone else, a family or a group of friends comes in, they set their own section of seats. And we were able to get like 1,000 fans in and do that for months and months and months. The Jaguars ended up doing the same thing. And the first week of NFL 2020, the only 2 teams had fans in the stands. It was the Jaguars at home and the Chiefs. And so that, I think, would be the biggest thing, because when we came out of the pandemic, we were really ready. Like I said, Punk wasn't here yet, but he was coming. And we came out red hot, and then a bunch of other crazy things happened, and All Out, the end of All Out is one of my, really, All Out is, I think, still it's our biggest triumph maybe, but tonight it was right there with it, and I will see where the numbers settle, but this was a great, the way we started it, not to go full circle to somebody else's question because I keep jumping around, but I thought it was the right thing to do to have Punk earn the #1 contender spot and wrestle his way to this position where he had big matches, and it built and it built and it built, and also he helped a lot of people in that time. A lot of people became better wrestlers and got spotlighted. Until tonight, I would say that was the biggest match of Will Hobbs' career, and then he was in a big spotlight on pay-per-view tonight, but those are probably the 2 big. And certainly with Garcia, he did so much for him. But Eddie, good Lord. And most importantly for us and the company and the fans, so it built to something really cool. So I think the biggest thing I would say, I'm sorry to go, but just thinking about it as I go, probably would be to trust our instincts going into the pandemic that this is going to be safe. Don't abandon ship, and I think it paid out big dividends for us. And then even when we had to go in the next week, they wouldn't allow anybody in Daly's Place March 25th. If anybody has never heard this story, they only allowed 10 people in the entire amphitheater as a fire. So it was Tony Schiavone at the desk. I was the only person backstage. They said the truck is a separate domicile. So Greg, you were out in the truck. There were 10 of you in the truck. I set up a trailer of wrestlers to be the crowd since there was nobody at ringside, but at least to get some cheering audio. And then God bless Chris. It was that Chris went out and was like, let's go, getting people going like a leader. And he didn't have to be there. Nobody had to be there. It was a very small crew. If you don't know this, I'm the guy who robbed a bank and he's telling you his secrets. I think people know this by now. Does anybody know from March 25th, Kip and Darby was taped the week before for Dark? People do know that now? Kip and Darby was taped. There was nobody in the building. Nobody knew the difference. So it was completely empty. Cody was on commentary by then with Tony, because what I did was, again, you only get 10 people. I couldn't do tag matches. Brandy was doing the ring announcing, because they showed up, and these are the people that really showed up for me. And so Kenny and Tony Schiavone were on at the start, because then at the end, Kenny and Sammy Guevara were going to wrestle like 28 minutes in an empty building and had a great match for the AAA title. And then at the end was whatever with Matt Hardy in the spot. I was just happy. It was Chris's idea with the thing, like I said, and whatever. It was you know what? The fact Chris and Matt even showed up, I was very thankful. I was going to do whatever. And Sammy coming out from under the ring made a lot of sense and set up stuff that ended up. Then we shut down for a month, and that match that we built there, we didn't get to do until May 6th. But when we did the May 6th TV, it's one of the things I'm the proudest of, because we were shut down for a month. Then we went April, and we had that crew that showed up. That's when the TNT title became. I'd wanted to do it for a long time. It was a plan, but that was like, okay, now we have to do it because that's all we can do here, because like we have to reset everything. 29% of the roster showed up for the tapings in Atlanta, and those are the only shows I go back and watch. Those Atlanta ones are literally the only shows I go back and watch. The last one is so good for what it was, with opening with Cody Darby, and then the crossover match with the Best Friends versus Havoc and Sabian, and the no DQ match, and then ending with Dustin and Archer, and videos and stuff. It was like the shows really came together, and they kept getting better and better. And also our post-production, I learned so much about post-production. It got better, which suited us really well, because then we came back going to the Wednesday-Thursday tape cadence. We're like Wednesday on, and we would tape Thursday, and that was really important. And I think also it cut travel down in half, and it saved a little money, but also it also was really good, I think, in the pandemic era, when it was peak pandemic, to have people traveling less, and people were we didn't know about planes and things like so. So that was really important. We came back May 6th, and then Double or Nothing come full circle to tonight, because that show wasn't here, but I was really proud of that show. That's one of the only other pay-per-views I would always go back to watch, because it was really special. And a lot of it I like to go back with Mox and Brody. I think it was great, and I think that was like Brody's best. That and the dog collar match are probably Brody's best matches here. His best pay-per-view match for sure. And and it was really special. And I called John and I talked to John and Brody in the pandemic. John was going to come back. He was like, he'd been out in April. He wasn't at the April taping, but he was going to come back in May. And I was telling him, we built Brody up on this thing. I think that's a really good match. We can get him in the top 5. He's like 3-0 record, and he can steal the belt. And we do 3-week build up, and it's like as good as we can do. I think it's going to be fucking great, dude. You guys are going to tear the house down, and they did. And then we also set up Taz and Darby that night, May 6th, which is a program that went like a year, and set up Jungle Boy versus Max. We set up so many things on that show. And then we did of course the street fight, which is one of my favorite live TV matches that we've done. Certainly, especially to that point with Kenny and Matt Hardy versus Sammy and Chris, the golf cart, the whole thing, the Inner Circle's Name and Lights, and then it built up to a Double or Nothing. So yeah, the pandemic era, it was hard for so many reasons, but I think we came out of it better than ever. So that would be the number one thing, and I think it's like that was what I was talking to Dana about too, because that's what he's proudest of too, and he says the same thing. Like, and it's very different, and there's different opinions on how the different things went, but he said that that for them that was important too, and I think it changed their business, and they did huge numbers by doing shows in April. I think it ended up being safely, and they came out of it even stronger too. So that was what he said. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, really just a couple more.
I'll take anybody who hasn't asked. I think there's a few people that I haven't gotten to talk to.
Yeah,
Hey, Reg.
Hey, Righteous Reg for Wrestling Illustrated, Grab City Podcast. We've talked a little bit about California, making your way back to California this week. Please come to the Bay Area. I like to say that out loud. You make a lot of conscious efforts. Did you make a conscious effort to have, we're going in with the tag team champions and the TNT champions being California people, representative for California. So did you make a conscious effort to have some great representation going into those shows?
Absolutely, yes. That was really important. I think we have a bunch of big stars from California. Of course, the Young Bucks also, and we'll be very close to their hometown on Friday. They're from Southern California guys. So a bunch of great wrestlers from Southern California on the show. It's a great point. And also representing different eras of AEW. Like I saw, who was it? You guys might know. Somebody in here might know. Somebody had a great tweet. Might have been one of you in the room, honestly. That I bet you saw it. That the 3 different eras of AEW were represented in that tag match. You had Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, the originals. And I've seen a lot of people talking about how I'm beating all the originals. So I just thought this show was an interesting balance of the new faces and the originals, right? And there was a balance. It was some of the originals, some of the new faces, and matches together separately, and it's gone. It's a tug of war like it should be. But I saw somebody say that the 3-way represented the 3 eras, because you saw Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, the champs from the original era. You had Starks and Hobbs, who come in the pandemic era, and tonight was the first time Starks and Hobbs have lost a tag match in almost 2 years. Winter is Coming 2020 against Cody and Darby was the last time, and that was their first tag match. They haven't dropped one since. They've been dominant, and they beat Keith and Swerve.
543 days.
What's that?
543 days.
Was that after Rampage was 541, right? And then it's 543 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember them saying 541 on Rampage, yeah. So yeah, it's been, it's been.
I gave him that stat, by the way.
Oh, did you? Well, there you go. So you did. So the 3 eras of AEW, to have, like I was starting to say. So, it's the thought I was giving and talking about those guys and how great they did. It's a 3, with the original with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, who were on the very first show here, and then have now worked their way to the top, and California guys, like you said. And then to have Starks and Hobbs, who came in the pandemic, both of them in different circumstances, but came together in cool ways, both of them. Starks on TV as a guy that was a pushed indie guy, and they got a great opportunity and seized it. And then I was in the ring, and we didn't know. It was a tryout match, basically. He was in the ring, and I said, I texted Mox, and I was like, I got the guy for what we want to do. I got the guy. And then he never met him or her. It was John. John fucking saw it, and then Hobbs was on Dark, and killing it. And I remember I wanted somebody big to wrestle Darby on the show where. I think it was Saturday Night Dynamite where Brody won the title, I'm pretty sure. And it was Hobbs versus Darby, and wanted somebody to big to be credible. You don't want somebody you don't think is credible to be out there manhandling one of your top young stars, and he did. But obviously Darby came from underneath, as he's known to do, and he's very he persevered, but it showed a lot about will to me. And then All Out was not long later, and he went the distance in the Battle Royal, and then saved John with a chair up on the stage when we were socially distanced with the fans, and Starks jumped him. So they were really important. And then getting
California too.
Yep, there you go. California, another California wrestler, Will Hobbs. That's a great point. And then of course with Swerve and Keith representing the post-pandemic era, two wrestlers that have come in. So you had the originals versus the pandemic era versus the post-pandemic era, and the three-way. I thought it was really cool. And I guess subconsciously I kind of thought about it, but like when somebody said it like that, I was like, it's so cool. Going into the show, it made me feel even better about it. And the three-way match they had, the singles match was great, and then you could tell people really wanted the three big guys. So it was just a cool dynamic. So there was a lot of great stuff on the show, but it's going to California, like you said. Hobbs is another great one. The Young Bucks, I think, is a great example. Scorpio Sky, and certainly a bunch of great examples on the show, top to bottom, and you just named a bunch of good ones. So yeah, I think it's really important going into LA. Having the LA Times here is nice, and a lot of great California journalists like Dave, who used to write the California Wrestling Report.
Oh, geez, that's a long time ago. That is too long.
It was before I was born, but
Before everyone in this room was born.
I don't know about that. I'm looking around the room.
Almost everyone.
But it's pretty cool fact. And so there's a lot. I think it's just cool for us to go into LA and to go into the forum, and also, frankly, to have the presence of the new management of Warner Brothers Discovery, the new bosses at TNT and TBS. And it's like so cool. They're throwing us a big party, and like that's a really cool thing for them to do, and for them to come to our show, it means a lot. And I'm just so excited about the future there. That's so cool. So thank you. I'm excited about California. Thanks for asking.
Okay, guys, really just
I'll give a few more. Has anybody not gotten to ask a question all night?
Oh, I guess.
Oh, Dave's asked 17 questions.
Yeah,
But you
that's
can
right.
ask, all right, but I'll get you.
Okay.
I want to get everybody, and then I'll ask Dave.
Is it in the back?
Eric from PWinsider.com.
Yes.
When formulating the shows, cutting something like the Casino Battle Royal that had been on previous Double or Nothings, is that hard to not have on the show, to get more wrestlers on?
Well, it would arguably get more wrestlers on, but I don't think it would spotlight people as much, and it's a longer match. Historically, a lot of entrances, and you talk about a match that could burn the crowd out on a night where we're trying not to do that. I mean, that's like, doing 21 entrances isn't necessarily the way to go. Also, I didn't want to have somebody come out, the winner of the match could tip what was going to happen in the main event, and I didn't think the winner, there could have been somebody that would have been a good matchup for either person. I also thought it was probably better to have Darby and Kyle do a great match of the length they did, which is a kick-ass hot match, versus sticking them in with 19 other people, or anybody else in the mixed trios would have made sense there, and the other matches on the card, I think all were good spots. The Death Triangle and the House of Black, I think with Phoenix coming back, they deserved a really good trios match. They kicked ass, versus like jamming the 6 of them in there with Darby and Kyle and a bunch of people. That's right. On All Out 2020, I didn't have the extra pay-per-view. And another reason did Nick leave? So I burned Nick out. Nick, another reason for the length of the show. I gave Martha as much time as she wanted to talk. And I told Martha, you can talk as long as you want to talk. And that could have been an hour, and we could have been here. So I extended the pay-per-view window also, not knowing about the Heat Celtics, even in case, because I knew Martha and she's such an intelligent, eloquent woman, Dr. Martha Hart, and I knew we could have a great moment. And she wanted to. I wasn't going to force her out there to talk. I said, we can show you, if you want to do a promo. She really wanted to. I didn't know she wanted me to come with her until, like, literally Britt's music was playing and she won the thing and the crowd was chanting DMD after the Owen Hart victory roll reverse variation, which is great. By the way, I thought Dax worked with Britt and head coach Britt and Ruby, and I thought he did a great job. And then Dax, we didn't see Dax and Cash until the end. And talk about Supercard of Honor. They're a huge part of Ring of Honor and a huge part of AEW. They've been a big part of some of the TVs, but there was a lot of stuff in the pay-per-view. They understood I didn't want to jam them into a situation. They could have worked a tag match, but again, there was already a lot on the show, and I think Dax saw a great, first of all, the Supercard of Honor. Who knows what's going to happen going forward? The big pay-per-views coming, Forbidden Door All Out, the future of Ring of Honor. So there's a lot of great opportunities, and also Dax was great working with Britt and Ruby, and then at the end was a really nice moment with them with Punk, I think. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But yeah, so Nick, to your point. That's another thing. No, it's okay. It's a great point. And you're asking about the length. That was another thing when I did the length. Before I knew about Game 7, another thing I was considering, I was like, maybe I should extend the window because, gosh, Martha, it could be 20-minute applause. And it ended up being very long. But I could have let her talk all night if she wanted to. And I did. I said, stay, Martha, you literally can talk as long as you want. We have the window. We had the time. And, within 30, even if it had been 30 minutes, it probably would have been okay, technically. So, and I wouldn't have stopped her. So that was another thing going in that I was considering. So when I first started to look at the window, that was one of my considerations, was we got Martha Hart, Dr. Martha Hart, and her family, Oj Hart, Athena Hart, is a big deal. and I didn't want to have to rush that. And I also then, as Game 7, I was like, okay, there's a lot of reasons why I can play with the format, do something different than I've ever done, give the same amount of bell-to-bell, buy-in plus revolution, one more match, but I bet the match time was very similar overall. And there were probably some longer matches. Oh, there were only a couple matches. Were there only 2 matches that went 20 minutes tonight? Only the Anarchy in the Arena and the main event, right?
I believe so.
There were a bunch of great hot 12, 15-minute matches on this page.
15, 17s, 18s, yeah.
And it was different, which is different pacing, and I think it was cool. And I think that was one thing people liked about the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. Swerve and Alex Zane had a great 13, 14-minute opener. There were some, Jay Lethal and Lee Moriarty was probably that length. And there were only a couple, same with the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, right? There were only a couple really long matches like Dax and Cash versus the Briscoes. And then the main event were probably the only ones that went that length there too. So that was, and it was different playing with a 3-hour window. Man, it was a crazy story. I think I on your podcast did I give you the exclusive about listen to Andreas's podcast. I gave him the exclusive about the Samoa Joe story. It was one of the craziest that people hadn't heard. The travel story. You remember? You were there.
I was there. Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah. When I saw Samoa Joe coming through, I was just like, what's happening?
But up to that day, we were running around like crazy
Yeah.
because, and I had to, if people don't know, I'll tell you. I'm going to say that. I don't want to say he's getting the exclusive then blow the whole story, but it's a good story. It was crazy. It was a travel miracle and the miracle of private aviation and some really cool pilots who thankfully helped me out on their day off. What else? Any more before we go?
Emily in the back has a question she hasn't asked yet.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Hi.
Hi, good evening, Tony. Thank you so much for an incredible evening. I'm Emily May with The Sportster. And CM Punk earlier today, this evening, mentioned some New Japan talent that he could potentially face in the ring. And so Forbidden Door is coming up June 26th. There's a lot of talk about this collaboration between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. What can fans expect leading up to June 26th?
Fans can expect a great event on June 26th. I've been talking to Ghetto and his office extensively, and it's like a Crimson Tide situation. I was just reading this book about Don Simpson. I know, I don't get much time to read, but when the Wi-Fi's off on the plane, going up and down every day, I usually get a little bit to read up and down the ascent and descent. So I was reading a book called High Concept about this, just what a weird, strange life Don Simpson led, and just these bizarre stories. And but it was a book I was reading, and so as I was thinking about this, and it's funny that you asked me. It was he produced a movie called right before he passed away called Crimson Tide, and Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, they both have missile keys to turn these in. It's a very different situation. But think of it like Ghetto and I both have a missile key. We're both going to try and I'm not going to try and force anything on him. He's not going to force anything on me. It's been a really good relationship the last year plus, over a year, that we've been doing matches and stuff together ever since we reunited Roppongi Vice on AEW Elevation. And it brought the Vice back with Rocky and Trent, and then have had Nagata come in and wrestle Mox, like I said, which was a real coup for us at the time, and all the great matches we've done since. There's going to be some awesome stuff. So June 26th at the United Center, expect an awesome Forbidden Door pay-per-view. We've always great pay-per-views in New Japan, have great stars and great wrestling, and I think they'll come together and it'll be something really special. I'm not at this time planning to do this length of pay-per-view, Nick. Even though it'll be shorter than a Wrestle Kingdom, I like you, Nick. I'm just kidding.
Because you set the expectation in 2019 for fans that you weren't going to do 5-hour shows.
I didn't do a 5. It wasn't. It was 4:37.
Whatever. It's 12:15 in the morning. This is a long show.
We've been sitting here a long time. You're still enjoying it. Clearly, I see a smile on your face. You're having a good time.
The juxtaposition of what you told fans you wanted to do.
In 2019, before I knew there was a Game 7 tonight or that Martha Hart was going to be doing a promo 3 years later.
My job is to find out if you're
I had no idea Dr. Martha Hart would ever come do a promo on the show, and God, I budgeted as much time as she needed. So there's 20 minutes of wrestling. 3 years ago, I didn't know that. So it's like, you're holding me to quotes from a long time ago, but in a good way.
That's my job.
You're holding me accountable, Nick, and that's why you're great at what you do.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing you in your hometown of Chicago for the Forbidden Door.
Far hometown.
Well, it's one of mine, 5 hometowns.
I have 2.
What's your other one?
I'm from Houston.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, Houston, you and I do not have a problem. We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that answers it.
Thank you. Like, yeah, okay, good. I'm glad. But the Forbidden Door, expect in Los Angeles. We'll get this thing going. You already saw, by the way. I'm sorry to. I'm not. Wrestle Kingdom's often along. Have you ever seen Wrestle Kingdom? You watch Wrestle Kingdom? Okay, great. Okay, so a lot of people in my company won't watch New Japan, and I'm a big New Japan fan. I bet. Show of hands of who watches New Japan in here. Oh, Brian, you don't watch New Japan? You full of shit. So a lot of people in here watch New Japan. A lot of our fans probably haven't seen it. I'm gonna bet. Yeah. So they're gonna get. They've seen some of the stars. I think we've already had great wrestlers. Some of the ones I mentioned. Ishii's been with us a few times and is great. So it looks like this is a more educated room than probably most wrestling rooms you're gonna get of fans. So I think we probably know more about some of these stars. We're gonna have to debut some of them on TV. It was cool to see Great O'Khan and Jeff Cobb. Jeff Cobb, he had been gone for over 2 years, right? Over 2 years. And I really liked it, the way they came in. And obviously it did, leave things open-ended. I thought FTR and Roppongi Vice were having a great match. Roppongi Vice had tried to win the Ring of Honor belts for a long time. They won a lot of big matches. They beat the Young Bucks in Ring of Honor. They won a lot of matches there. So I think they said this was like their 4th shot at the title. And they didn't really get a fair one. And they were having a really good match, and those guys came in and busted it up. So it sets up interesting things not only with AEW and New Japan, but also potentially with Ring of Honor and New Japan, who obviously have a lot of history together and have partnered. Was anybody at their Madison Square Garden show here? Yep. A lot of people were. And yeah, that was, I think, one of the most successful shows Ring of Honor had done, and also a big debut at New Japan here. So I think we can do a better show. And that was, I think they did a great sellout, a great crowd. I think we can do a better show than that, and have more involvement from big stars from New Japan, and also have, frankly, from the American side, even more star representation than that show had, which was a big success. This will be even bigger and in line with what you've come to expect from AEW events, also New Japan. I won't beat Nick up about the show length question, because it's a very fair question, but I think I will try to. It probably won't be the same thing in June 26th. I don't think the sports competition's there. What? I'm kidding. Just keep going back. But in a good way, in a loving way. And
I'd rather you do this than bring up WWE.
Well, that's true, and then Dave brought up that he wrote for WWE, so we're just having a good time. We're chatting.
I didn't.
And you did, I think. Well, you brought up what they do backstage, which I think you're familiar with because you used to write there.
Yes, you mentioned.
Okay, are we having a good time? All right. Anybody? Thank you. I'm sorry that.
So much. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
We can talk
New Japan. Let's go.
Let's do it.
I've been watching it for 31 years. The first WCW pay-per-view I ever watched, which I watched 100 times. It was 14 matches, everyone. It was Super Bowl 1, Nick. Super Bowl 1, I watched it 100 times, and the main event is Fujinami versus Flair, and it wasn't. But then I went back after the live pay-per-view. I had to see the match before, and I watched the pay-per-view they did, which was a WCW New Japan pay-per-view in Japan, which was a great pay-per-view. I thought the Flair Fujinami match there was probably better. And I thought the Hase and Sasaki versus the Steiners is one of the best matches ever in WCW, and hopefully we can have that kind of same high standard that they set with that WCW show there. Again, with Akira Nogami versus Liger.
Yes.
And then Arn and Barry Windham wrestled Saito and...
Oh man.
I remember they hit that Arn ducked.
It might have been Hashimoto, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it might have been the big guys. It was a great show, and that I think we can hopefully now that's been over 30 years, and that would be the standard I would love to live up to. Starrcade '95 had some good stuff, but it wasn't just about that. New Japan versus WCW, they had the best of 7, which was real cool. But then also there was the 3-way for the world title, and Flair and Sting and Lex, and then Macho Man. So there was a lot of non-New Japan story. This will be I think it'll be good. It'll be true to AEW, true to New Japan. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
The match was Arn and Barry versus Masahito and Chono.
Thank you, Saito and
Chono.
Chono. Thanks, of course. Yeah, and of course, and then I learned about Chono being the protege of Luthez, who we talk about wrestling online. People are like, remember when you couldn't go online and hear from wrestling? I talked to when 1995, I was 12 years old. I would have regular conversations with Brian Pillman Sr., DDP, who's my friend now, and the late Luthez when he was writing the book Hooker, and told me a lot. He told me Bill Watts used to carry a gun around, actually, when I was 12 years old, and I was a big fan of Mid-South Wrestling. And he was like, yeah, Bill Watts wouldn't put up with any shit. He had a gun. No, I trust me, I do not. I learned a lot from those experiences, and I think the online wrestling community has been a thing a lot longer than people realize. So with that, it's been a great time. Does anybody have anything that I have anybody I didn't talk to that came all the way, wants to ask a question? Yes, please. Sure, you too. Yes, I saw you. Yes, sir.
Well, get left off. Go first.
Thanks.
course, Athena's debut tonight. I know some people want to see her debut as Joker, so I just wanted to ask, like, how long did you know she was signing, and what went into making a decision to do tonight?
Thank you for asking. Really appreciate it. I thought that it would be a great debut. I'd love to have big pay-per-view debuts in different circumstances. Like, obviously, the way Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole debuted, it was a very different circumstance in some ways, but on the other hand, when Stokely became available, it was like, I can take one big debut and get 2 debuts across in one thing, but I didn't know he was coming. I knew she was. And there was a situation that was, I thought was a clear, starting with Jay Dana, which I thought, the Jay's, best TV match probably is still, I think, Jay versus Anna on Rampage in DC in the main event. And so I thought it would be a really fitting rematch, but also set up many matches down the line. And I thought at the end it would be really cool if you had Statlander come back. And originally I wasn't planning for Statlander to be in the tournament, but she did a great job as a substitute. Had an awesome match on Rampage a couple weeks ago with Red Velvet, and then another awesome match with Ruby. And clearly the crowd was really behind her, but I already knew that I thought this would be a great spot to set up Athena debuting a 3-on-3 kind of standoff with the baddies, Jade, Red Velvet, and Kiera Hogan, squaring off against Anna Jay after a match. Chris Statlander came out and faced off everybody. She was ready to take on all of them, and Red Velvet, she's got a real axe to grind with, not just because of their long friendship and the way Red Velvet stabbed. Are you okay?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Okay, good. And then the way Red Velvet kind of stabbed her in the back after she got caught in the thing with Layla, and it's really unfortunate what happened with Layla in there. She was really rolling. I thought our last pay-per-view, the first match of the show, the buy-in kicked ass. And so I really appreciate you asking that, because I think it's a really good thing to do. I was really excited to have Athena debut here, and I didn't necessarily think it would make as much sense as the Joker, because the Joker was Britt Baker's opponent, and of course now we saw Britt Baker, I think it was a great moment, and to crown a king and a queen with the original Queen of Hearts, the all-time Queen of Hearts, the real Queen, Martha Hart, Dr. Martha Hart. So I thought it would be really cool to have Athena debut in that context across from the baddies. I didn't know Stoke was coming until today. I know, like I said, I never met him or talked to him, but it worked out perfect. And I had in the back of my mind, if it did work out, I thought that would be a cool scene, but I didn't know, and I thought we could have brought him in later. But if you wanted to come, he was definitely somebody I had in mind. It was cool to have him come in and have it work out like that today, though. It was good. Cool, hell of a lucky break for us. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, I think that's a wrap, everybody.
Great. Would you have one more? This is my last one.
Okay, well, Tony, obviously thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. And let's give a round of applause for everybody in PR. Thank you guys for setting this up.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, I hope everyone had a good experience taping this for the first time. And I heard that was bad for you, and a bunch of you said that sucked, so I tried to make it so you could. So I hope it worked out.
Thank you for being accommodating.
Sure.
I wanted to ask you something that you mentioned a few weeks ago back on an AEW show on March 23rd in Austin. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, so feel free to correct me if you want to. But you came out and you had mentioned how special and important the city of Boston was to you. And you had mentioned something about how vital South by Southwest was to you as far as the formation of AEW. So I wanted to ask you, what about the event, gave you the inspiration of, forming the company potentially? And, another question about South by Southwest, if you're a fan of it, would AEW host anything there?
Oh man, the raft, we lose. Oh, he's right there. Hey, we never know. We've had great crowds there. Every time we've gone, they've been really hot. So to start with, they've been great every time we went. We went back there. That was our second show back on the road, and it was Fighter Fest Night 1 with Darby. You were there. That's awesome. Darby, Ethan Page, the coffin match was a great match and a great night. And thank you for asking. It's a great question, and I'll give you the last of my long answers, and hopefully, but it's a memorable one. And it relates to somebody you know. I don't know if you know this story, Dave. So, first of all, Austin, Texas. It was a true story. I told CM Punk, was it CM Punk Dustin? What was it, the match in Austin that CM Punk
It was CM Punk and Dax recently.
Dax, that's right. So I told Punk, this is one of the best crowds we have. And I went and told the crowd right before, if you remember, I was like, I have a friend in the back, and I told him this is one of the best crowds we have, and he's about to come out here. And then you all started chanting CM Punk. And it was about as perfect as the crowd warm up can go, because I didn't even say anything, and you guys started chanting it. And then it was what I wanted. And then the show went live, and 1.2 million people were watching it right then, and it was like CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk. So you guys you were awesome again and again and again. You always have been. One of the best Dynamites we ever did was 3 weeks before Revolution. I actually flew. Yeah, it was great. I didn't know you guys had a direct flight to London. I learned. I flew out to London on British Airways, and then flew back to Atlanta for another one of the best Dynamites ever. And South by Southwest, I was on a panel with some of the most distinguished people in pro sports and just sports media, and the CEO of my company was moderating, and there were people up there that included Nate Silver and Daryl Morey, who was a friend and a mentor to me, and he was the GM of the Rockets at the time, and he's now the GM of the Philadelphia 76ers. He's a really smart person. He's always been very nice to me. Now that he doesn't have Ben Simmons on the Nets now, right?
Yep.
So when I edited it off the show when Ben Simmons got booed. I told him I would. He said, I heard he texted me. He's like, I heard there was a Ben Simmons thing on the show, and I was like, don't worry, Daryl. There won't be on Friday. So I was on there with Daryl and Nate Silver and Rafe Anderson, the CEO of True Media and the founder, and co-founder along with Jeff Stern and Rafe Anderson. So they were on stage with me, and I saw Chris Nowinski in the back. And Chris asked me a question about safety and has now worked with the NFL and gotten to know him better. But he asked me a question, and that's how I first got to know Chris. He asked me a question with this big panel of guys, and I saw in the back, it was like back where Greg's sitting back there with more people in the room, and it was at a private event. Jim, the Raptor House. Jim, does anybody know from Boston? Sports is pathetic. Raph, you might know. Jim, the Raptor House. Roma. AC Roma, Jim, what a great guy. That's pathetic of me. I'm sorry it's so late, guys. He invited me, and Nowinski was in the back, and then I talked to him after, and we built a real lasting friendship, and that was kind of the first person I ever knew that I watched on TV as a pro wrestler that I met in person, because like I said, I talked to Pillman, DDP, Luthez, different people online, and they were really nice. DDP gave me tickets to a Nitro I couldn't use because I was a kid and I had school, and I didn't live in Florida back then, and they were great tickets. And we used to have conversations about psychology of wrestling. I was 12 years old, and the fact that he even would talk to people. He took fan feedback before people did that, and on Twitter and social media, Instagram, and he did it on AOL, dial-up. And that's just probably a morsel of how he got to where he is because of the hard work and that he did beyond what other people did, right? And so with Austin, I was up there, and that's how I made the connection with Chris. And then then it's been such a special town for AEW. And like I told Punk, I said this is going to be one of the greatest things. And I told the crowd, and you guys made it. You were great for Punk and Dax. There were 52 weeks of the road on the year. Sometimes I do forget things. But that was one of the best matches we've had on TV and one of the best moments. So you guys have been great, and that was the kind of formative moment for me in the wrestling business in early 2014, right? That would be February, and then the 2018, I was in a position 4 years later to have a conversation with the president of TNT and TBS that probably led to more so than anything else to the creation of the company. So I love Austin. Thank you.
Now, would you consider hosting events in South by, because there's a lot of music, a lot of films going on?
We should look at that. Maybe there's something there. Maybe and it may not even have to be the TV. It could be something else. There could be shows. That's something I've looked at is how to expand our portfolio of events, because we have a great roster in all over the country, different places. There could be something there. Sure, we haven't really gotten that far.
I mean, you've got a mogul on your roster that's pretty good that you probably utilize, right?
Who's that, Swerve?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. I think we can all agree about that. He'd be tremendous. He is an entertainment mogul. We have a couple moguls. I think there's a few musicians, and he would be above all else. So, absolutely. Chris, obviously, a pretty prominent musician too, who's charted, and Brody King. But obviously, Swerve is a mogul. So those would be great choices. We could totally. And Max Caster, by the way. Yo. All right, well, it's been a great night, and with that, I think I've kept you long enough. Thank you. Thank you.